Hey grade 7, welcome to another edition of Mr. V Teaches Math. Folks, over the past couple of videos we've been learning about cross-cancellation and reciprocals. Cross-cancellation helps us not only in dividing fractions but also in multiplying fractions. Reciprocals that we learned about the other day is definitely going to help us in learning about dividing fractions. And what I'm going to show you today is we're actually going to use reciprocals, common denominators, and cross-multiplication to divide fractions. So let's get into the reciprocal method. Alright, so reciprocals. Let's remember back to yesterday that reciprocals are pairs of numbers whose product is 1. And we remember that multiplying by the fraction and then dividing by the whole number will give you the same answer. And so the example yesterday was there were 44 shells that were divided by 2, which gives us 22, and then we also found out what half of 44 was, which was also 22. And we said that the number 2 and 1/2, they're called reciprocals. You basically just flip the number over. And so what we're going to do is I'm going to show you this method here, where you're going to multiply by the down here we have the example 3/4 divided by 1/2. To use the reciprocal method, what happens is you keep the first number the same and you switch the numbers. You flip the numerator and the denominator. So if your second number is 1/4, then over here you're going to flip the number and it's going to become 4/1. So flip the numerator and the denominator. Also, what's going to happen is you notice that over here it's a division symbol, and then over here you switch it to a multiplication symbol. And so that's how you use the reciprocal method to solve these questions, okay? So the next thing that you do is your new question becomes, instead of it being 3/4 divided by 1/4, you have 3/4 times 4/1. And what you can do is you can do the cross cancellation and notice that 4 can cancel out and simplify down to 1. So what we end up with is 3/1 times 1/1, which is just 3/1, and then you simplify that down to just 3. So change the sign from division to multiplication, flip the second number to find its reciprocal. Okay? So let's do a little bit of practice using the reciprocal method. So I'll go through them quickly. So that number stays the same, sign gets flipped, second number gets flipped. So it becomes 4/2, and then when you simplify it down, it just becomes 2, because 2 is in 4. 2 times. So 5/6 turns like this. 5/6 stays the same, becomes times 6/1. That can cancel down. So you end up with 5/1, which equals 5. Over here, this one stays the same, becomes multiplication 3/2. There are no common cross multiplication things that we can, or cross canceling things that we can do. 3 times 3 is 9, 7 times 2 is 14. That's actually already in simplest form. Okay, so that is using the reciprocal method. The next method that we use is called the common denominator method. So in using this method, you find the common denominator like you would in addition and subtraction, and then once you've rewritten the two fractions, the numerator of the dividend, which is the first number, becomes your new numerator, and the numerator of the divisor, which is the second number, becomes the new denominator. Okay, so I have this example here of 2/3 divided by 5/8. Between 3 and 8, the common denominator is 24. So I do my multiplication stuff. So then I end up with 16/24 divided by 15/24. Okay, now the 16, that becomes my new numerator, and then my 15 becomes my new denominator. Okay, so that's my answer down here, is 16/15. And remember that if it's an improper fraction, you have to convert to a mixed number, which means that my final answer is 1 1/15. Okay, so that's the method of using the common denominator. So let's just go over some practice. So my first one's 2/5 divided by 1/3. My common denominator is 15, which means this becomes 6/15 divided by 5/15, which becomes 6/5, which becomes 1 1/5. Okay. Over here, Common denominator between 9 and 3 is 9, actually. So this number stays the same. This number becomes 3 over 9. That numerator becomes my new numerator. This numerator becomes my new denominator. That's my answer, 2/3. And then lastly, common denominator between 6 and 7 is actually 42. So this becomes 35 over 42. And this becomes 12 over 42. So this becomes 35 over 12. 12 goes into 35 twice, with 11 left over. So it becomes 2 and 11 over 12. So that's the common denominator method, which you're welcome to use. The last method that we talk about is something called cross multiplication. And in cross multiplication, you basically you multiply the top left numerator by the bottom right denominator. See how the arrow here goes from bottom right to top left? Likewise, you multiply the bottom left denominator, which is this number, by the top right numerator. And so the arrow here goes this way. Okay? And so when you multiply 6 times 7, you end up with 42. You multiply 1 times 9, you end up with 9. So your answer here is 42 over 9. Now you can't leave it like that. You have to convert it to a mixed number. So 9 goes into 42 4 times with 6 left over, still over the 9, and then 6 over 9 simplifies down to 4 2/3. Okay, so that's the cross multiplication method. You have to remember to go the right way. Okay, so you're going basically from right to left, and then you have to do the cross multiplication. It's kind of a different way to do the reciprocal method, but you're welcome to use whichever of these methods you want. So, doing some examples, 5 over 8 divided by 1 over 3, that ends up being 15 over 8, because the arrows go this way and that way. So 15 over 8 converts to 1 7/8. 8 goes into 15 once, 7 left over. Okay, this becomes 15 over 12, because the arrows go like that. Do the multiplication. 12 goes into 15 once, with 3/12 left over, which simplifies down to 1 1/4. And lastly, you end up with 48 over 49 is the one way of looking at it. You can also say, hey, I can do some cross cancellation here, because I see these two 7s. And so 7 divided by 7 is 1, 7 divided by 7 is 1. Goes the other way as well. 6 and 8 have a common factor of 2. And so 6 divided by 2 is 3, and 8 divided by 2 is 4. And so that actually just simplifies down to 3/4. Bang, done. So that's the 3 methods of fraction division. There is reciprocal, common denominator, cross multiplication. You are welcome to use whichever one makes the most sense to you. So have a great night.